Chapter 11. Crystal City had stood for TerraCycles, a monument to the union of Cybertronian ingenuity and aesthetics. It shimmered and glowed as the various materials of its composition caught different spectra of light, creating a prismatic show that was visible for dozens of hicks in any direction. During certain atmospheric conditions, even the citizens of Aiken could see it shimmering like a mirage just over the horizon. It was a monument both to achievement and to the aristocracy of Cybertron that demanded beauty along with function. Scientific research went hand in hand with artistic innovation here. Soundwave hated the place. To him it reeked of self-indulgence. Rumble, frenzy, eject, Soundwave said. The too many cons he had brought with him spun down to the floor and awaited instructions. Operation Matrix Quest, parameters as in previous briefing, he said. Do not let anyone see you. If anyone does see you, ensure that they tell no one. A series of chirps was the mini-cons' answer. They could talk, but on a mission, especially a mission in which timing was critical, as it was here, they tended to communicate via coded bursts. They skidded away into the shadows and Soundwave returned to the surface, standing sentinel against the possibility that they would all be discovered. He preferred to avoid a stand-up fight. The chance of losing was too great. But for this, the risks might be worth it. He kept in touch with the two mini-cons via a direct video link that played as if on the interior of his own optics. For a moment he considered opening up and ejecting Ravage and Laserbeak. Too dangerous, he decided. The more of his mini-cons he sent in, the more likely it was that he would lose one. And on this mission, he might well lose one, because he was after the deepest secrets of Crystal City. Not even Starscream, who had spent much of his scientific career in the labs contained within these endlessly refracting walls, knew every secret of the city. No one did. Except, perhaps, Omega Supreme. And it was Omega Supreme who worried Soundwave. He hadn't come all this way to get rendered into his component molecules by one of the Guardian's missiles. Not even for the liberation of Cybertron. However that was going to be accomplished. Soundwave thought he had Megatron convinced of his loyalty, but the truth was he was waiting to see how things progressed. His skills would be useful to the High Council and the Cybertronian Defense Forces as well, and they would be useful to whatever other groups emerged to compete for the future of Cybertron. Orion Pax, for example. Soundwave felt strongly that Megatron was underestimating the librarian. Time would tell, however, and right at that moment time was something Soundwave didn't have. He moved back outside the security-sensitive perimeter surrounding Crystal City and waited for his mini-cons to send their first set of rendezvous signals. Frenzy reported in exactly one cycle later. Nothing out of the ordinary. On the half cycle, Rumble followed up. Everything in his sensory perimeter was normal as well. Soundwave started to wonder what he was looking for. No, he knew what he was looking for. He started to wonder whether it could actually be in Crystal City, if too many cons could sneak around without even registering an automated probe of their credentials. Either things were not as they once had been in Crystal City, or the object of his search was long gone. It occurred to him to wonder whether it even existed anymore. There was no way to know short of laying one's hands on it. Had the civilization of Cybertronians grown and developed past the matrix of leadership? Was a fragment of a long broken mythical sword really worth pursuing and handing to a chosen leader as if it made a difference to that leader's quality? Soundwave was not superstitious. He never had put much stock in the old stories of Cybertron, in the Primes, the 13s, legendary actions and that sort of thing. He knew how the minds of sentient beings worked. He had spent his existence thus far finding things out about Cybertronians that they didn't want anyone to find out. If you did that for a while, very quickly you lost whatever superstitious leanings you might have had. The workers inside Crystal City were the scientific elite of Cybertron, the planet's most advanced thinkers and engineers, capable of marvels. Yet, thought Soundwave, the space bridges still floated in their orbits, dead and slowly disintegrating. What use was a scientific elite if it devoted all of its time to refining previous achievements without ever pursuing new greatness of its own? If the Matrix was in Crystal City, Soundwave thought, Some academic was probably using it in an experiment about color preference or something equally stupid. Twin data streams flowed from Frenzy and Rumble as they made their way deeper into the center of Crystal City, and from there down into its subterranean laboratories, where most of the real work took place. Beneath Cybertron's surface, experiments encountered much less interference from stray cosmic rays and ordinary background radiation, as well as the everyday electromagnetic noise of a highly advanced technological civilization. If the Matrix, or anything else important, was in Crystal City, odds were it would be in the downstairs parts. Seeing advanced materials experiments, Rumble reported. Weapons system integration using energy feedback from chassis-based absorption panels. Non-critical, Soundwave thought. He sent a narrowcast burst reply, continue search. Report only mission critical information. Where was the Matrix? Or at least something he could take back to Megatron and use as leverage to cut a better deal. He was willing to be the Decepticon spymaster that Megatron seemed to want. Compiling knowledge, especially damaging knowledge, was one of Soundwave's favorite pursuits. But spymasters eventually fell victim to one singular problem: their principal employers started to need not just the information a spymaster provided, but information on the spymaster himself. So the position brought with it the certainty of rivals. Soundwave didn't want rivals. And if he could nail down the location of the Matrix so some of Megatron's fanatical ex-gladiators could storm its location, he would have enough in the way of good favor to see him through whatever this war would bring. Briefly he wondered if the High Council could make him as good an offer. Unlikely, it seemed. They were determined to keep everything the way it was. Soundwave didn't particularly mind the way things were, but if they were going to change, and Megatron was going to make sure they were, with or without the librarian, Soundwave wanted to be on the right side as it happened. Frenzy reported in. Large portions of subsurface labs cut off. Warning signs everywhere about intrusions from the underworld. Explore or continue reconnaissance. Recon is primary, Soundwave sent. Focus. Underworld incursions. Interesting. Who knew what might be down in the underworld after the terracycles that had passed since the last exploratory expeditions, or the ending of the tradition that every Cybertronian had to make the underworld run from the Well of Allsparks to Crystal City? That, thought Soundwave, was one more step on the way to softness and decline. When the younger Cybertronians survived that run, they emerged tempered and ready for whatever Cybertron might need from them. Now they posted signs and fretted about what was on the other side of long unopened doors. If Megatron could restore the swashbuckling spirit of Cybertron, Soundwave thought, any amount of collateral damage would be worth it. 43. Simultaneously Rumble and Frenzy reported in a local area communication intercept. Someone, deep inside Crystal City, was talking about Megatron. The transmission was heavily encrypted, but the parts of it that Soundwave could parse at the moment filled him with dread. Someone down there foresaw that Megatron was a dire threat. And it sounded like that someone was taking a step that Soundwave had been hoping would not be taken. It sounded as if the scientists in Crystal City were awakening their guardian. They were awakening Omega Supreme. Frenzy, Rumble, back now, Soundwave commanded. Both Minicons pinged that they were on their way. Soundwave almost couldn't wait for them. If Omega Supreme was going to stand up for the existing order on Cybertron, Soundwave suddenly wasn't so sure he wanted to be a revolutionary after all. The archives in the Hall of Records were far from silent on the contents of Trypticon Station. Constructed in the distant past as a simple space station, orbiting on the same orbital plane as the twin moon bases, it had more recently been recreated. Could this be true? Orion Pax thought. Who had done this? Was the entire station sentient? Had it been given a spark? Why? The records hinted that something had been sequestered deep within Trypticon at about the time it had been raised to sentience. Wherever Orion Pax looked, though, he encountered dead ends. Records had been altered or removed. Security barriers had been erected for which he had no clearance. He went to Alpha Trion in the end, not so much because he wanted Alpha Trion to know what he was seeking but because no matter what else he had become, He was still a clerk of the Hall of Records. Problems with the data architecture were very disturbing. Archivist, Orion Pax sat at the door to Alpha Trion's study. He waited while Alpha Trion finished writing something in the book on his desk. When the archivist looked up, Orion Pax spun some of his findings on holoscreens along the study's wall. There has been a great deal of data manipulation surrounding the topic of Trypticon Station, he said. Particularly where its spark is concerned. Why was it made sentient? What are these references? He indicated several documents on a screen near the door, that indicate something of critical importance has been hidden on the station. Alpha Trion examined the records closely. He glanced back at his book, one hand falling on it as if he wanted to flip through its pages. Then he shut the book instead and turned back to Orion Pax. I do not know what is concealed therein, Orion Pax, he said. But I do know that Trypticon was recreated, I should say, given spark, to serve as guardian for something that an ancient version of the High Council thought needed to be hidden. Do any members of that council still survive? Orion Pax asked. Alpha Trion was looking out the window again. Sentinel Prime, he said. If he yet survives. But what is in Trypticon Station, what must be so jealously guarded, I do not know. Something in the tone of Alpha Trion's voice made Orion Pax want to pursue the question. There are further references to seekers being given charge of the task of guarding, he went on, prompting his elder. Yes, said Alpha Trion. Ask them what they know. Ask them what they know. 44. Orion Pax did not know any seekers. He saw them flying overhead. He knew that some of them were designed for atmospheric and some for space operations. He knew that among their leaders was Starscream, whose name Megatron had mentioned and who was seen protecting Sentinel Prime in grid-harvested security video of the Decepticon attack on Altihex Casino. And he knew, thanks to the few communications about Trypticon Station that had not been tampered within the grid, that Starscream and some of his officers were now at the station. What they were doing, he did not know. Nor did Orion Pax know how to contact him or what he might ask to get the beginnings of an answer instead of a curt refusal. Was there some super weapon stowed deep within Trypticon to prevent its misuse? Or hidden knowledge, an artifact of the Primes left behind for future Cybertronians to use when the time was right and the need was greatest? The records were silent. So was the keeper of the records, Alpha Trion, when Orion Pax most needed him to speak. None of it mattered until he and Megatron had offered their vision to the High Council and seen what future their ideas had in the eyes of Cybertron's ruling body. Orion Pax returned to his workstation and took up once again, possibly, he considered, for the last time, the tasks and responsibilities of his cast. He read, he assimilated, he categorized, he indexed. And he considered what he might say to Megatron, who would surely ask about this search. Had he found anything worth knowing? And if he had, did that mean he might have found something he should keep from Megatron? Orion Pax considered the possibility that he might need to keep secrets. It was something he had never done. It made him uncomfortable, but also, he was honest enough to admit this. He knew that if he had secrets worth keeping, he was more than just a data clerk in Iacon's Hall of Records. Great events find great Cybertronians, he had read somewhere in one of the versions of the Covenant that circulated through the Hall's archives. And other times, great events make great Cybertronians. Which was happening now.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you guys want to watch more like it, please subscribe to my channel and become part of the video game fanfiction plot. And please leave a comment down below and hit that like button. If you guys have any suggestions on any stories you guys want me to read, don't hesitate. They're always welcome here in the video game fanfic plot. That also goes for video games. Until next time, goodbye!